In a world where insanity reigns supreme and safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, it's comforting to know an ancient, fat, long-haired, bearded reprobate has your mind in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, and despite every attempt by the SHR Media Network to revoke his shameless contract, we return to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon.
You're listening to Late Night Radio on the SHR Media Network. Caution, there will be mature themes explored and potentially adult language used. If conservatarian words, phrases, certain concepts, or rhetoric offends you, tune out now.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike?
You magnificent bastard, I read your book.
I drink your milkshake.
How dare you?
I call that bold talk for a one-eyed fat man.
Fill your hand, you son of a bitch!
Of course you realize this means war.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, where I'm broadcasting live and direct behind enemy lines in occupied California. Always spell it with a K. And I am broadcasting 2 miles east of the locus of evil on the entire left coast. That would be the Bill Mill, the belly of the beast, the Capitol building in downtown Sacramento at 10th and L Streets, where late at night you can hear the death of common sense in its concomitant wail as it wafts from that putrefying edifice. And at the end of the show, when I exit the plush, resplendent, sumptuous, and palatial SHR Media Studios, I'll be smelling the odoriferous stench of sulfur, brimstone, and evil emanating from that building downtown. Be forewarned, what you're going to hear from me for the next 2 hours is my opinion, and my opinion only. But because of the fear porn that has gripped this nation, the saloon is no longer open, except now it is. I have declared myself to be an autonomous zone, like another bartender back east happened to do. So now I am still serving stiff drinks, facts, history, logic, rationality, proportion, context, tradition, intent, and common sense out of the front door. By the way, a reminder, we don't water our drinks just like we don't water our conversation. Politics, religion, crime, culture, economics, race, sex, science, law. We talk about it all right here in the saloon where the speech is free, but the booze is not. This is 2020. And I am done with bipartisanship and compromise. This is the new age of modern political warfare, and make no mistake, we are at war. It's bilateral. Either we win, normal, regular Americans, or they win and turn this country upside down. Because they'll tell you to your face now, just like Muslims, they'll tell you exactly what they mean to do to you. And instead of in the past when they'd couch their phrases, oh, we don't want really to take your... yeah, really. Now they're telling, oh, hey, in chat, welcome to the real Mike Pasqua. Simone says the Alaskan, Sergeant Booker, and one viewer who will not be unmasked, because we don't do that here in the show. So I have a very interesting guest here tonight in the Saloon. This may or may not be the very last show that we have here in the Saloon because, well, we lost our lease and the building, the house, is going to be sold in the not too terribly distant future. That having been said, now the last guest that I actually had here in the studio live was Eric Regard, and he was running for California Assembly in District 9. With very little bankroll, he almost pulled off a coup himself against Jim Cooper. I had Eric in the studio 5 times and contributed to his campaign, mucho buccarinis, because I put my cash where my mouth is. And we have someone here tonight who is putting her livelihood and her mouth where her feelings are. And I got her name is Gabrielle Ingram, and I met her like I meet a lot of people these days for the show on social media. And some people work out and some people don't. Some people answer me back and some people don't. But I've found that I discover some of the most interesting people for the show on social media. So for tonight, for the first hour, I'd like to introduce you to Gabrielle Ingram. So let me, instead of doing this, let me do a little bit of an introduction. First, I have to say, Gabrielle, that I met you on Facebook. You have a page on Facebook, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the thing that I saw was your video on Facebook, which started out, you were talking about the supervisors, and that apparently you had gone to a supervisors meeting.
No.
That's the Board of Supervisors.
I'm just going to wait a minute.
For the County of Sacramento.
I'm new to live. I'm not a fan.
So you had a video that I listened to that was 22 minutes long. And at the end of that, because of what you said, I thought, I need to get her on the show. So that's why you're here today. Is it okay if we go into a little bit of background with you? You're talking about the County of Sacramento. By the way, we're in Sacramento County. The County of Sacramento Board of Supervisors. And they were talking about various conditions that they were considering for a reaction to COVID-19.
Correct.
Would that be an accurate summary so far?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I watched this video for 22 minutes, and you had a tale to tell. So maybe I should start where I started. You were in the Board of Supervisors, the County of Sacramento building, where the Board of Supervisors holds their meetings.
Correct.
Downtown, in downtown Sacramento. And you were there to do what?
We went there for public comment. We were hoping to enter chambers, but we wanted our faces there. We didn't want to just call on the phone like we have been.
Okay. So you wanted to have input to what they were going to do in reaction to COVID-19?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you must have known that this meeting was going to occur.
Yes.
Okay. And if I'm not mistaken, this was November 17th?
I think. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you went there simply to comment.
Correct.
So they were inviting people to come in to comment?
No, we knew that they have been blocking the public from entering chambers, but this was so important that we wanted to show.
Okay. And when you say me, who are you talking about when you say me?
Me?
Yourself and anybody else?
There's a group that's working together in Sacramento County that's tracking what's going on. We're part of the United Counties of America initiative with Freedom Angels. My group on Facebook is Stand Up Sacramento County. And we're watching the public health response to COVID-19 and the effects that are coming from it.
Okay. So what does that group do?
The Freedom Angels is training counties on how to approach public health. Citizens usually don't have a big knowledge about local government and how they can participate. We're trying to get Sacramento County to follow Placer County's lead in doing a resolution to end the public health emergency, to give the county a break and not enforce. We're trying to get the city councils to declare themselves sanctuary cities for businesses like Atwater did. And we are working with school boards to try and get them to follow the model that Orange County did, the Orange County Board of Education, to reopen the schools. The response has been too harsh. There's too many side effects of mental health, the economic health, and the burden of proof hasn't been met on why they're doing this when we're way past 2 weeks to slow the spread. So Freedom Angels is training the counties. We're one of 30 counties across the nation that are working with them and training with them on how to do this.
Okay, so you mentioned something about Atwater, which is a little town in California.
Correct.
I'm not familiar with what happened there, so can you tell us what happened in Atwater? Why is that significant?
The city of Atwater realized that the penalties that were coming, they were watching the measures of what public health was pushing through the counties, and it didn't match up with what they were seeing in terms of how many are sick. So regardless of how many cases there are, they didn't see that the amount of sick people was matching up to where it made sense to have businesses entirely shut down. They thought the response was too heavy. And so they had multiple meetings about that, and they filed a resolution citing the Constitution, that the burden of proof had not been met, that public health was overstepping, that they didn't have the symptomatic issues to validate the response, and they declared themselves sanctuary cities for businesses. And they even went further, and the mayor declared the COVID funding blood money, and they have balanced their budget without it. And he's actually going out, and Tracy just had a meeting. I don't think the city council passed the sanctuary city, but there are other cities that are having town halls to try and follow Atwater's model, and the mayor has been going out to assist with that.
Okay, so on the East Coast, we're seeing governments, cities and counties basically step on the necks of the people that have businesses, whatnot. And recently in Staten Island, there was a guy that had a bar, and he declared himself an autonomous zone.
Correct.
And so the sheriffs in New York County came in, and they physically arrested this guy. He was serving drinks. He wasn't charging for them. They could make donations. But he, like everybody else that's in business, folks, if you don't already know, to be in business in California, always spell it with a K. I honestly don't know how businesses make it in California. You are one of the most taxed entities around. You exist under some of the most stringent regulations imaginable in terms of the environment and otherwise. The state wants its pound of flesh. The county wants its pound of flesh. The city wants its pound of flesh. And as far as they're concerned, you exist to fund them.
Correct.
And they don't exist to serve you in any fashion, except to serve you with notices or arrest you if you happen to be attempting to make your livelihood, for example. So let's go back to November 17th. I have, and I'm looking at from your page, County of Sacramento, because I worked for the Sheriff's Department for 35 years. I retired in 2016 from Sacramento County. For 35 years, I have 41 years total in law enforcement service, so I'm familiar with the County of Sacramento, and I'm going to get to this also a little bit later. I don't know if you happen to see the response from Sheriff Scott Jones.
Someone forwarded to me. I haven't read it yet.
I'm going to read it tonight.
Thank you.
Because this is how all the rest of the law enforcement agencies should be responding to this. In any event, here's an IDC, an interdepartmental correspondence to the Board of Supervisors from Peter, I can't read his last name, in Health Services, and Marie Wooden, Director of Environmental Management. So they're talking about report on COVID-19. And in this, they're talking about a rationality, a stance. They want to approve the urgency ordinance adopting penalties for violations of public health orders. So those are items that are not in effect right now, but these are items that they're attempting to, instigate in the future?
On the 17th, they were going to vote on it. They ended up voting to move it to the 8th. So on Tuesday, they will be voting on this.
Okay. And on the, let's see. They didn't decide to do anything during that time. So you go into the meeting. There are how many people with you as you go into the Board of Supervisors?
There were 4 that arrived. A 5th joined us later. So there
Okay.
were 4 of us that went at the same time.
So this is about what time during the day? I'm getting somewhere with this.
We arrived, I think we entered the building about 9:30. The agenda item was slated for 9:45.
Okay. So the building is open.
Correct.
You can walk in.
Mm-hmm.
And as you come into the building, I happen to know that if you come in from the north door, the soups chamber where they hear everything is over on the right.
Mm-hmm.
So the doors were open. You could walk in?
Yep.
Okay. So they weren't locked?
The front doors weren't, no.
Okay. So was there anybody going, you can't go in?
Not until we hit chambers. There was a security guard right in front.
Okay.
So we entered the building, no problem.
Okay. And then you attempted to go into chambers, and what happened?
We were told by the security guard that it's closed to the public, but there was a viewing room to the right that had like a 40, 50-inch TV, and there were tables and chairs in there, and there were people in there, and he said, you can go in there. And we said, no, we want to go in for public comment. And he said, it's closed, but you can call on your phone for public comment and watch live on that TV. And so we ended up going into that room.
Okay. Did you happen to know any of the other people that were in there?
The people that were already in there, no, they all looked like county employees. That was our estimate, or news people that were tracking the meeting. The agenda item before the one we went for was a pretty hot topic.
Okay. So if you can, kind of like the video that I watched, just kind of tell people what happened.
So we went in and we sat down in the back just to kind of be respectful of the other people that were there. None of us were wearing face masks. And so we were there about 5 minutes, and the security guard came in and said, along with the county building manager, that's what we later found out, and said, excuse me, you need to wear a face mask to be in this room. I said, I cannot. I cited a medical condition. Another person did. And then the other one said, well, I'm citing my freedom. I'm not going to wear a mask. And there was a little discussion. They ended up leaving, and 3 or 4 people that were in the room with us at that potential conflict, and it wasn't aggressive. It was just conversation, but 3 or 4 people kind of got up, kind of scattered like cockroaches and left the room. And there were 2 people that stayed in there with us. And it seemed like we were cool. So I actually set my stuff down and went out to use the restroom, walked through the lobby, no problem. When I came back, the security guard stopped me and said, I'm sorry, why can't you wear a mask? We really need you to wear a mask. That's the guidelines. And I said, I cannot. I have a medical condition. I cannot wear a mask or a shield. And I said, and that applies to some of them and some of them won't. And he kind of grumbled something on his breath. And he's like, we may have to call. And I said, okay, because we've been trying to get a hold of Scott Jones. So we're like, oh, well, maybe we'll have a conversation. So I expected that somebody was being called. And we went back in the room, and I think we were back in there, 20 minutes or so before Sacramento PD showed up. 2 officers came in the room and joined us. And it was the same thing, because the county manager came in and again was saying, you guys can't be here unless you're wearing a mask. And the conversation was, this is a public building. This is a county building. Some of us have medical conditions. The guidelines state that there is an exemption for a medical condition. And so he was very upset, and he was saying that you're putting other people at risk. And by then, the other 2 people that had been in there with us had left. It was only the 4 of us in this room.
Okay.
And my comment was, not only are we more than 6 feet apart, we're in our own room. So how is that putting you at risk? And you're wearing a mask, and your office is over there. And you could tell he was mad, and he kind of walked out. And so the police officers asked us, they were kind of like, well, who's in charge? And none of us spoke up. Nobody was in charge, but I got pointed at like, hey, she'll talk. So I got the finger point. And so I went over, and they said, okay, so they asked us why we were there. And we said, agenda item 43 is on enforcement. And how funny, because you're here to enforce us wearing a mask in this building. And the agenda item is enforcement of public health orders. And that opened up a conversation. They're like, what do you mean enforcement? I said, well, somebody's going to have to enforce it. Who do you think they're going to call to enforce it?
Are you talking to the SAC PD
I'm talking
officers?
to SAC PD.
Okay.
And their response was they had never been in the Board of Supervisors meeting, and they're kind of listening. It's going live, and we're having a discussion. And they asked, why can't you wear a mask? And one of the women with us felt very threatened by the fact that PD was there and started yelling. And she did end up putting on a mask, but she was very stressed by the situation. And then some of us were just taking it in stride. And I joked with them. I said, I'm actually disappointed you're here. I was really hoping, since we're in the county building, that the sheriff would show up, because I'm trying to get an appointment with him. So I figured I might as well have that conversation here. So it was a very relaxed, for me, just talking with PD. And they started asking questions like, well, how can they do this? And I started talking about AB 262 that passed last year, and it funded the ability for public health to push these items in the event of an outbreak. And an outbreak is 3 or more cases of something. And here we are with more than 3 cases of something, and public health is who is driving this bus.
Okay, if I can interject right now, just
Yes.
for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the vibe that I'm getting off of you right now, which is what I got off the video, which is what made this really attractive to me to be able to speak to you. You're not someone that just came in off the street. You're exhibiting to me some really specific knowledge about practices and laws, so you're bantering back and forth with these people, and my guess would be, especially regarding the building manager, they don't know what to do with someone who is as informed as you are. And you seem to be very well informed. So if I could stop here just for a moment, how did you, folks, I'm talking to Gabrielle Ingram. Would it be way out of play to say that you are a community activist?
I am now.
Okay.
That just kind of happened, but yes.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
You ever hear of Brandon Straka, the creator of Walk Away?
Yes.
I've had him on the show about 5 times.
Okay.
And it's funny how a hashtag like that becomes a little beastie of its own. He didn't intend necessarily to be what he became. It sort of the mantle fell over his shoulders. So, with your knowledge and being here today and making videos, is your background such that you think this is something you're going to pick up and kind of run with a little bit?
Until we have a course correct, I'm not backing down. So maybe unwillingly so, yes. But
okay.
I feel like, I guess my past experiences, have primed me for this unknowingly. So I guess, yes.
Okay, so you're very well informed. You're quoting very specific bills and numbers. So that leads me to believe you're very educated about this topic. So to go backwards just a little bit, How did this come to your attention? When did you decide that all of this makes me really want to know what's going on? Is that what you decided?
I was following this, so I guess I learned about AB 262 when a group of us were at the Capitol last year fighting SB 276, which eliminated medical exemptions for our children. So I have a vaccine-injured child that I cannot have a medical exemption per the state, not per his doctor, per the state. So he cannot enroll in public or private school. While we were there following that bill and petitioning our legislator against that bill, we saw AB 262 come across. And that got our attention because it's talking about an outbreak. And we've noticed a pattern in California and across the country of doing things to set up to take away medical freedom. And 262 kind of caused an alarm. And we said, in the next 2 to 5 years, this may be something that goes into play. Never in a million years did I think it would be about 3 months later that's when Wuhan, China, when they had their outbreak, that's when that hit the radar. And I'm emailing family in December going, hey, something's going on over there. Maybe we should pay attention. And then we walked into the United States starts taking action around March, and it's coming through public health, and it raised all the red flags went off. Like we walked, we're just asking all these questions where we walked into this. That's kind of convenient. And just turning that brain off, it's still something, hey, we need to pay attention to this because a lot of our freedoms can be stripped through this 2 weeks to slow the spread. And this been the slow walk of our liberties being stripped away and all these distractions. So it has become something to where I was praying this summer. I'm like, okay, my mental health was tanking because I'm literally watching all of this happen, feeling like I have no control over it. And I'm just this pawn in this shuffle. And it was like, what can I do? And then the Freedom Angels announced the United Counties of America thing that they wanted to do because they had been helping counties one by one. They're like, this is too slow. We need a team. And so I was asked, hey, Gabby, can you help with Sacramento? I'm like, help what? And I said, sure, before I realized what that meant. So here we are. So when you approached me and I'm like, okay, let me think about it because I'm used to showing up and being the support person. I'll back you up. I'll be the support. But being out and being an activist was not something that was my lifelong goal. But here I am.
Okay, so you got into this because of some kind of a situation that involved vaccines that involved your family intimately.
Personally.
So you became knowledgeable about this area. And then that was before Wuhan 19 hit.
Correct.
And that the state of California made all these various reactions. The federal government made its reactions, etc. So you were already clued in before that. So let me back up. Folks, we're talking to Gabrielle Ingram. I guess I labeled her now as a community activist. Bing! There you go.
I'll take it. Okay.
Who is rallying on behalf of people in at least the state of California, we spell it with a K, who are losing our freedoms and liberties.
Correct.
And are on the cusp of losing even more. We'll get to that from the lovely Gavin Newsom. So let me back up a little bit further. Were you politically aware before that? That is to say, you had a cognizance of some of the things that were already going around in the county and in California?
In California, yes. I was clueless on the county. So it was kind of a crash course starting this summer to figure out the role the county plays.
Okay.
So federally, state-wise, yes.
But politically speaking, sort of overall, were you aware of a lot of the politics that were going on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're someone, what I'm trying to get at is that you're someone who was already aware of how politics are involved in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As opposed to a lot of people, and I bet you know a whole ton of them, who are clueless.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And or don't want to know about what's going on and would rather, I don't know, fill in the blank, X, Y, or Z.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you have a little bit of a political background. You discovered that vaccinations were, or potential forced vaccinations, were about to affect your family, and it brought it home on a personal level. Then Wuhan 19 hit. Then you became even more aware of how we were to lock down. I'm not going to go through all the machinations of what occurred all through the state of California. Always spell it with a K, and the rest of the United States. So your awareness went from, I'm really aware, to your radar really lit up.
Mm-hmm.
Your radar screen really lit up because you became even more aware of what's happening around you.
Correct.
Are you happy with what's going on around you?
Absolutely not.
Okay. All right. Well, folks, tell you what, we're going to take a break here. It won't be that long, maybe a minute and a half or so. And as we do that, we'll be back and we're going to continue with this. I have the IDC that I'll read a little bit further. I want to get into some more details about the meeting that you went to on November 17th and what transpired.
Okay. And
what transpired between you and SAC PD, and then whatever information you happen to glean out of that particular meeting. In any event, we're going to come back just in a little bit. I'm BZ, the Bloviating Zeppelin. That is Gabrielle Ingram, who is here, a mantle of community activist that I have unfortunately thrust upon her shoulders. And we'll be right back after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, are you guys listening? This is Shannon from Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media. I know you've been wondering where we are and what's been going on. Well, folks, that's right. We're back. So please join us 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday on SHR Media, on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, and Facebook Live at 11 a.m. on Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM at Facebook. You don't want to miss a minute. We've got lots of guests, lots of segments, and lots of interesting things. And let's face it, there's nowhere for you to go, so you might as well tune in. Again, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. We're back live on the air on SHR Media, 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday, audio and Facebook Live, audio and video. Yes, we are going to do video. Facebook Live, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Hope to see you soon.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And we're back. We're nationwide. I am BZ, the Bloviating Zeppelin. I'm here tonight with Gabrielle Ingram. She is a community activist. Not something she was intentionally looking for.
No.
Anyway, as you're listening on Spreaker, hit share on Spreaker. Couldn't start YouTube tonight, so don't share on YouTube. I am on Facebook. You can share like hell on Facebook. And I'm also on Periscope, so if you want to go to Periscope, you already have an account there. You can see us in all our lovely glory and my plus 300 pounds glory as well. Anyway, Gabrielle Ingram is with us tonight. She attended a meeting in the County Board of Supervisors chambers on November 17th. You were regaling us with the Sacramento Police Department had been called, and you were speaking to them, and they seemed to be
laid back.
What you were expecting or not what you were expecting?
I was expecting that. We had no reason to have a different presence, although we have seen it, but I was not expecting conflict.
Okay. So you went in there initially to comment, discovered that you could not, and went into another room in order to watch on a television screen.
Correct.
So now we've got to the point where you're beginning to discuss things with the Sacramento police officers. What occurred after that then?
There apparently were two more officers in the lobby, and we had a friend had shown there was a fifth person that was out there that was overhearing the discussion with the county building manager and then the other officer, and he was a higher position. I don't know what he was, but he came in and introduced himself and repeated what the county manager was asking. And it was basically, you guys need to wear a mask or they're asking you to leave. And I said, are they going to trespass us? And he just kind of looked at me like, and I said, well, where are we going with this? Are they wanting to trespass us? And I said, because I looked at the security guard and I said, twice you had asked and I had cited a medical condition. And I said, and he kind of nodded his head. And I said, okay, so are we following the county public health guidelines or are we not? Because the county public health guidelines on page 2 state that there is an exemption if someone has a medical or psychological condition.
Right.
Per ADA, I do not need to procure a letter to prove that. So you're taking me at my word, but I'm not lying to you. I'm telling you I have a condition. And he said, well, let me go back and ask the county manager. And the whole spread of time from when they arrived to when they left was 90 minutes. So there's a lot of conversation that's happening with the two officers in the room. But when the lead officer went out, they were out there in the lobby about 15 minutes. And my friend's texting me. She's like, this isn't going well for the county manager. And he was told you cannot trespass them in a county building. And he cited something that happened at the courthouse. And I don't know what that was. But he came back in and he basically waved at us. He said, okay, ladies, have a great day. And I was like, we're done? He's like, yep, have a great day. You're good. And we were there another 2.5 hours because the agenda item before 43 went really long. And then they ended up voting to move the item to the 8th. But we stayed.
Okay, so while you were there, after all the other kerfuffle got taken care of, so to speak, what are the specifics that the supervisors are looking at in terms of penalties or consequences for noncompliance?
They are looking at fines, and they have minimums and maximums depending on what the conditions are. I've seen anything from, I think there was 25 to 10,000. We do know from businesses in the county that are already getting fines, whether it's from ABC licensing, from the health department for different random things. They're using anything they can. So this would basically make it so they have the ordinance there to back up the enforcement. But they're not just mentioning businesses. They're saying any public health orders. So, we have this curfew. So if I'm caught after 10 p.m. and there could be a fine. If he says, hey, we're going into lockdowns, if I'm caught outside, will I be fined? So this is open-ended. It's not just businesses. And the fact that it could just be businesses is bad enough. I mean, they're getting hit from both sides. They're getting hit by, they're being forced to close or reduce capacity 25-50%. Some of the businesses that called in that day were talking about it's $8,000 a day for this tent to eat inside, outside, inside. And $8,000 a day when they can't even fill it at 100% capacity. They don't have the money for that.
Now, that's $8,000 a day required by...
I'm sorry, not a day. Excuse me, let me back up. A month. To rent the tent for Summit. And I don't... some of the larger businesses, there was one of the people that called in owns a franchise that has multiple restaurants within Sacramento. There were quite a few that were saying that it's this hefty bill for them to follow the requirements.
Sure. On little teeny businesses, mom and pop businesses that just enjoy doing that kind of stuff. This is driving people out of business.
They're going bankrupt.
People are going bankrupt. It's ruining families. The suicide rates are skyrocketing.
Yep.
It's ruining children and families. I don't see anything good coming out of this. There's so many places that we could take this at this point. I want to read what I think you wrote, Gabrielle Ingram, Stand Up Sacramento County. This document was pulled from the agenda packet for the November 17th, 2020 meeting. The vote for the approval of urgency ordinance allowing enforcement of the public health order was moved to December 8th instead, just like you said. So it was delayed. So it's going to be in a little while. Note that a 4/5 vote is required on it. As it stands, we have one board of soup that opposes this, 2 that support it, and 2 that haven't fully declared publicly, but tend to fall in line with the other chair who absolutely supports this. So overall, Gabrielle Ingram, do you get the feeling that in totality, this is likely to pass?
I think it's likely to pass.
Okay. It says here in the paper that I've got here, read this carefully to see that it initially sounds like it's directed at businesses, but the language leaves it open to enforcement of any activity that partially or entirely disregards a public health order surrounding COVID-19. Keep in mind, if you've been watching the videos linked to this page, Dr. Bellinson, okay, who is Dr. Bellinson?
Director of Public Health, although...
In Sacramento County, okay.
He is stepping down December 22nd. I just learned he has a family emergency, so I'm not sure who will be filling his position.
Okay. Dr. Bellinson asked the board about citing people who got out of their car to look at Christmas lights. Yes. Folks, we passed logic long ago. we will all feel the effects of the ordinance approval. So what can you do? You can educate people. That's what essentially a community activist does. So at the end of your 90 minutes, where you were not allowed to go into the board, but you were able to see what happened and listen to what happened, when they go back on December 8th, were there any specifics about what you think that they're aiming at? In other words, what are they looking to do? And to what body of law? See, here's the other thing that I really like about you. Just by speaking to you, and just by having the SAC PD officers and the manager of the county building that you were in, by the utilization of the words and phrases that you bandy about with regularity, because I believe you're that educated and knowledgeable about these things, you talked about ABC, alcoholic beverage control. You talk about trespass. You talked about specific bills by their numbers. That should clue anyone and everyone in that you're not anyone to be steamrollered, which is another thing that I really like about you, which is another reason that I wanted you to be here tonight.
Thank you.
What are they looking to do you think?
So I've been asking myself that what could possibly be the benefit from here? Are they, because there's only one outcome I can see happening with this, is the absolute decimation of our small businesses. So is that the goal, or are they not aware and not cognizant that that could happen? So I see us, the businesses can't afford to pay these fines. They can barely keep their doors open, moving into the dark purple tier that we just heard about. And if we move into another lockdowns, I can't tell you how many businesses I'm going in that are like, we're not going to survive this. We're going to have to close.
They're on the ragged edge already.
So that means, and the one of the women that's been working with me in Sacramento County, she made a point. She said, we're going to end up with the homeless left in Sacramento and the state government workers, and their salaries are paid by the taxpayers. So there's not going to be anything left to keep this flowing. So is that their goal, or do they really believe passionately that they're doing a good job and this is all just to wipe out coronavirus? And that's where I'm like, they have to know, because the flu has been around for 200 plus years and we've never gotten rid of it, even with a vaccine.
No.
So this logic that the sick and the vaccine hits, it's going to be this miracle and COVID's going to go away. I'm like, the only way that's possible is if this was all manipulated and people are sick. So my brain just starts going all over the place. I'm like, there's trying to figure out the rationale. So with enforcement, it's to get people to comply. And the question is, do they know? Do they truly understand the consequences, or are they that blinded by their positions and entitled to the power that they have that they just don't care? And I don't know what the answer to that is.
When in doubt, always assume that it's about power, control, and money. And as I said, even before Tucker Carlson said it this year, I said last year, in an election year, it's all about the election. Everything is about the election. When you don't think it's about the election, it's about the election. Mm-hmm. Now, the funny thing that I find unique is that I call them leftists, especially in this state. When they say it's about the science, it's not about the science.
No.
I go back to an original CDC guideline, which is still true now in terms of the overall effects. COVID survival rate, 0 to 19 years, 99.997%. 20 to 49 years, 99.98% survival rate. Mm-hmm. 50 to 69 years, 99.5%.
Yep.
70 plus years, 94.6%. This makes no sense whatsoever.
No.
So let me speak for the last group.
Okay.
40% of the people that have died in the United States behind Wuhan 19 have been in nursing facilities and nursing homes.
Correct.
They are the most vulnerable group extant in the entire United States. Yet, despite that, New York Governor Cuomo created a mandate that hot Wuhan 19 patients be inserted into nursing homes, and then was shocked I tell you, when 11,000 plus people died in the state of New York. As far as I'm concerned, go to the front of this. This is my opinion. Governor Cuomo is a murderer.
He's not the only governor that did it.
Murderer.
Mm-hmm.
New Jersey did it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of that guy's name. Phil.
I'm blanking. I know this.
Plus, the other aspect, I don't know if you saw this story today. This just came out from The Hill, thehill.com. Now, we were told that we need to just calm things down and we'll flatten the curve. A couple of days, couple of months, maybe, if that. And then we need to get a vaccine. And then if we do, Fauci said, well, you're still going to have to wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
A story came out today from thehill.com. Pfizer chairman. We're not sure if someone can transmit the virus after the vaccination.
Shedding is a real thing.
Okay. Why are we getting vaccinated? And will it be mandatory? And then, of course, everybody has to ask, is the RFID chip next? I don't know. I happen to think that's where that is going. I have here a statement, and this is something that you wanted to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Because some sheriffs and some law enforcement officers throughout the United States have said that they're not going to be enforcing these things. That also occurred in the state of New York as well. Cuomo gave them hell.
Mm-hmm.
But when I took my oath, I am an oath keeper, I am a sheepdog, and my oath never stops. Ever. Period.
It's as it should be.
And so I swore my oath to the United States Constitution and to uphold the Bill of Rights. I have, folks, a wonderful statement by Sheriff Scott Jones that just came out today.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, why I'm not enforcing health or other orders, by Sheriff Scott Jones, 12/3/20. While I remain in quarantine, he did get Wuhan 19. He came down with it. There seems to be those, including the governor's press conference today, who can't resist connecting my contraction of COVID with my official position of not utilizing armed officers to enforce emergency or other orders. Two distinct things. I've enacted dozens of measures inside our department to keep our employees and the public as safe as possible, including mandatory mask policies. I am responsible for the welfare of over 2,000 employees. Despite these measures, because of the inherent nature of the necessary work we do, the possibility of contracting the virus is an ever-present reality. I personally have not engaged in any reckless behavior. I generally always wear a mask in public. I don't engage activities over the recommended numbers or dine out when it has been against the rules. Three things, incidentally, we know others have done, but been lucky enough to escape infection. Also, every one of my public statements on the matter have urged compliance with all safety measures. But alas, I still got COVID, not through some high-risk, flagrant disregard of guidelines, but at work. Though some would like to blame me, and as savory as it would be for some to do so, one would similarly have to blame all 14 million Americans that have contracted the virus, not to mention almost 300,000 people responsible for their own demise. That certainly defies logic, and it is borderline evil.
Mm-hmm.
Now to my refusal to enforce directives, and they seem to come from everywhere. From public health officers who may not be doctors, thank you.
Yep.
From various elected officials, though they are not lawyers or court officers charged with guarding the Constitution, and from unelected bureaucrats who are neither elected by nor accountable to anyone. The primary reason is practical. We don't have the staffing. We still do all the same types of things we have always done, and we don't have additional time or staffing to take on more. The second reason requires more introspection. There exist serious questions of constitutionality.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Probable cause and reasonable suspicion that guide our actions as law enforcement officers. We can't guess, we can't be wrong, and we can't take the word of politicians, bureaucrats, and health officials that they exist. The legislature is charged with enacting laws, yet these groups want to create laws that have the same force and effect. And even if they were enforceable, This is the crux of the biscuit. What level of force would be appropriate for officers to use to enforce them if folks resist compliance? And what if there is tolerance for some violations, but not others? Say a social justice protest versus a wedding. Mm-hmm. What if a public official violates them, as we've seen on the news? Should they be arrested? Should violators be cited at the scene and left to continue violating, or should they be booked into jail? Should we use law enforcement to shut down businesses? What level of investigative resources should we dedicate to determine if somebody is out of their home for an essential purpose, air quotes? There are clearly more questions than answers. And as for me, one sheriff in one jurisdiction, I am not going to put my officers in that position. I am going to encourage folks to continue to call us when they need us and assure them that we will show up and help in whatever way we can to make this situation better, not worse. I'm going to continue as I have from day one of this pandemic, educating folks when necessary so they can continue to make the best decisions for them and their family's safety. I hope most folks can respect that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
That is what a real law enforcement officer does. Mm-hmm. That's what a real law enforcement officer says. And that's the stance and position that they should take. December 8th comes around. And Gabrielle Ingram, on December 8th, what do?
We're showing up again.
Now, this is in the Board of Supervisors chambers.
We would like to enter the chambers. If we aren't able to get in, we'll be outside waving at them through the window, but we will be there.
Do you know offhand if there are any people that are actively advocating for the county supervisors to pull off various rules, regulations, and penalties?
There are people that call in over the phone with public comment that very much believe that the sky is falling, everybody's dying. You must enforce this to protect us. So yeah, there are people that believe that this is what needs to happen. If you just put on your mask, COVID would go away. Yeah, there's people that support it.
Can anyone here or in the audience tell me one pandemic that didn't eventually affect anyone? Hands? Bueller? The difference between this and others is that, well, number one, you can't stop a pandemic. Mm-mm. It just doesn't happen in the history of history. Now, there's a big difference in response between Wuhan 19 and, say, Ebola or Marburg.
Correct.
Where your survival rate is 20% or worse. So this is going to be here for a while. Now, the governor, 4 hours ago, introduces new stay-at-home order amid COVID-19 surge. Newsom introduced a new regional stay-at-home order on Thursday, today, after he said that the state's intensive care beds could be over capacity within weeks and a surge in coronavirus cases. He said it's going to be applied by region. It's going to require bars, wineries, hair salons, and other non-essential businesses stop.
Does that include his winery?
If you're an owner of a business and that's where you make your money, how can you possibly be non-essential? Mm-hmm. I have never quite understood that. Non-essential businesses across 5 areas to close for 3 weeks once the region's intensive care capacity falls below 15%. Statewide travel will be temporarily halted. Okay. Mm-hmm. How you going to do that, asshole? Good luck with that. Schools will remain open. You have a kid, don't you?
I do,
Gabrielle?
yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is your child in school?
I homeschool.
Uh-huh. How about any of the public schools that are around you? Because I'm sure you network with a lot of other people. Mm-hmm. All those other schools are open too, aren't they? All those public schools?
I think they're distance learning. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think you're correct.
It depends on the county. I think we're still distance learning.
Yeah.
But we're out and about because homeschool groups are getting together.
Yeah, those are the homeschools that they want to make sure that are crushed anyway.
Yep.
So let's cast our glance further afield. You go to this on December 8th, and let's say knowing that this sheriff is not going to enforce these rules in this county for right now while he's sheriff, although the election is coming again in the not too terribly distant future. December 8th, then, tell folks again what your group is.
The Facebook group is Stand Up Sacramento County. We are working with the Freedom Angels on the United Counties of America initiative.
Okay. Should this pass, whatever proscriptions they have in mind for Sacramento County, fines, penalties, I don't know, potential arrests in Los Angeles County, they're going so far as to say that they're going to be turning off power to people's homes. And water. So what is the potential reaction of you, your group, and other people should, at least in Sacramento County, the supervisors decide, yes, punishment is a great idea, let's go for it?
I'm hoping that people show up in the streets, stand out. I mean, we're very much for peaceful noncompliance. We're not going to burn and loot, but we'll make our presence known. And we have groups that are researching citizens' arrests. You know, we're currently looking into all avenues that are at our disposal should they move forward on this.
I don't think they can stop a pandemic. Let me go a little bit further.
Nobody can stop a pandemic.
Yeah, it reminds me of a Monty Python. No one can survive a Spanish Inquisition. Are you familiar with a guy named Kevin Kiley?
Yes.
Okay. A California legislator.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, if you want to find out in the state of California, always spell it with a K, what's going on in terms of the Bill Mill downtown at 10th and L Streets, go to Kevin Kiley, and I think it's blog.electkevinkiley.com. What he said is he's discovered a document that is a testament to the collapse of constitutional powers in California. These are the raw numbers that he put out. This is from Newsom. This is what Newsom has done. 1 emergency declaration, 142 days, 46 executive orders, and 400 laws changed.
Yep.
Much without the legislature involved.
Correct.
At all. They were a little bit pissed off about that. So what do you, Gabrielle Ingram, what do you see as the future, maybe for yourself and for these other groups and organizations? Are you going away?
We decided to table whether we're moving until February. We're watching to see how things pan out with the recall, with the election, with things like this, with enforcement. We are a self-employed family. Our family, we've been hit very hard by this. And so there comes a point where we have to decide, can we sustain our livelihood in California? And so we are going to fight as long as we can while we're here, while weighing out whether we need to go or not. And so we don't want to go. We're going to fight while we're here. And so I am hopeful that this will turn around. People are starting to wake up and show up and come out of the lens, the wool over their eyes is clearing of, there is distract. We've got the election, we've got, people are arguing about masks rather than arguing about their liberties. And then people will argue that the definition of liberty is something else. I'm like, no, we're going to Webster's. We're looking at the actual definition of liberty. So there's just all of these things where people are uninformed or underinformed. And it feels like you're trying to stop a train with a stick, but I'm hopeful that we can course correct. And if not, we're out. Then we leave. Along with I have 6 friends and one cousin, 5 friends that moved out of the state in November, all of them self-employed. It started with the retirement communities were leaving because they couldn't afford to live here. And then it went to the conservatives were leaving because we're oppressed with some of these things. Now it's the businesses that are leaving. Our infrastructure, our economy, we pay a lot in taxes, state, sales, all of the licensing fees. I mean, we pay a lot. And so if we left and started over our business, we would have a different standard of living, but our family's here. So we have to weigh that out. But we're not alone. I mean, every business I talk to, it's just they're exhausted.
I'd like to make an observation right now.
What's that?
You are a whip-smart individual. Clearly, you know what's going on. If you decide that you're going to stay in Sacramento, I would suggest to you that if you're amenable to it, the mantle of community organizer or the organizer for these entities fits you very well. For someone that was concerned about whether or not they're going to speak well tonight, you've knocked it out of the ballpark. So just from me to you, if you have any doubts as to whether or not you can convey a message effectively, rationally, with great cogency, you can.
Thank you.
So I just want to let you know it's open. If something else happens, say December 8th or beyond, what I would ask is kind of let me know what you're discovering, because if you're still interested in keeping that train rolling on the track and keeping freedoms and liberties for people, I'd love to speak to you again.
Okay.
Would you be amenable to that?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Folks, this was an hour gone like that. Bing! Just like I said.
Yes.
We're speaking to Gabrielle Ingram. And again, tell the people whom you represent. Oh, and your Facebook page.
I'm working with Freedom Angels, United Counties of America, and our Facebook page is Stand Up Sacramento County.
Okay. All righty. Thank you ever so kindly for being here.
Thank you.
I had a great time. Very illuminating. December 8th is what's coming next for the people in Sacramento County. And the other thing I want to let everybody know, I don't deal necessarily very much with local stuff. Mm-hmm. My show generally is about a much broader umbrella. National stuff, some stuff in California, also global stuff, and around the world, in Europe also. But one of the reasons when I focus on California information, always spell it with a K, by the way, is that what happens here in California is a petri dish where the craziest crap grows, and if you think that it can't infect you, don't be so foolish. Mm-hmm. That's why I wanted to have you here tonight, to understand so people can hear what's happening in California. There is pushback, and it's coming, and it won't stop. That's all I'm saying.
Perfect.
So, Gabrielle, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
And, folks, we'll be right back after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Hey, are you guys listening? This is Shannon from Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media. I know you've been wondering where we are and what's been going on. Well, folks, that's right. We're back. So please join us 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday on SHR Media, on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, and Facebook Live at 11 a.m. on Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM at Facebook. You don't want to miss a minute. We've got lots of guests, lots of segments, and lots of interesting things. And let's face it, there's nowhere for you to go, so you might as well tune in. Again, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM We're back live on the air on SHR Media, 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday, audio and Facebook Live, audio and video. Yes, we are going to do video. Facebook Live, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Hope to see you soon.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
It is he that is me, bringing perspective from across the sea. Join me, Jack Alexander, 4 days a week for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the news and issues affecting life and liberty here in the USA. I'll show you what the mainstream media refuses to. Politics, border security, defense, healthcare, travel, nothing is off limits. Catch the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast each Monday to Thursday on Facebook, YouTube, and everywhere good podcasts can be found. Also, check out the website, www.jackalexanderexperiment.com.
Southern Sense is conservative talk with Annie, the radio chick you bellows as host, and C.S. Bennett co-host. Informative, fun, irreverent, and politically incorrect. You never know where they'll go, but you'll love the journey. Annie is a top conservative host on Top Talk Radio and features some of the finest guests packed with important politicians and newsmakers. Listen every Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, noon to 3 Pacific, on the SHR Media Network. Remember, Southern Sense is common sense.
After 6 years covering terror and corruption, the Unpleasant Blind Guy is making a change. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker and YouTube through SHR Media and on the Western Free Radio Network as I team up with Jeff Mitchell, host of the English Defense League radio show on blogtalkradio.com. Check show pages for airtimes. It's the Unpleasant Blind Guy.
On EDL Radio.
There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And we're back. I'm back. He, she, and it, they are back. Just as I told Gabrielle, an hour will seem like a minute. And it's very true. I think she was incredibly well-spoken. She is a great representative for that. So go to her Facebook page, find her, and if you're in Sacramento County, you can help out. That's what community activists do, and it's funny how a lot of community activists didn't set out, as opposed to some people with first names of starts with a B, wanted to be community activists, but like the people that are the bravest under fire, they didn't set out to be heroes. They just became them. And though it may not be something that she necessarily wants, it may be something that she is pretty well suited for. Folks, let's go there now. Here.
The Bloviating Zeppelins HeyJackass.com Chicago Death Toll Update. Courtesy of Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot.
And this is once again illustrating Chicago values. Go to HeyJackass.com. HeyJackass.com. Again, illustrating Chicago values. From the final November total versus November 2019, here we go. Shot and killed in Chicago, 53. Up 89%. Shot and killed, 289. Up 81%. Total shot, 342. Up 82%. Total homicides, 58. Up 66%. Week in progress, 1129 to 12.5. Shot and killed, 7 in Chicago. Shot and wounded, 39. Total shot, 46. Total homicides, 7. Year to date in 2020. Shot and killed, 668. Shot and wounded, 3,259. Total shot, 3,927. Total homicides for the city of Chicago under the lovely Lori Lightfoot, 735. Oh, and by the way, what that means now is the 2020 Chicago shot clock indicates that a person is shot in Chicago every 2 minutes and 3 seconds. And a person in Chicago, in the city of Chicago, is murdered every 11 minutes. Woohoo! That's something you really have to look forward to, isn't it? There's so many places that I could go right now. This concerns me because this involves me. There was a particular website that is going to be eliminated wholesale. I don't know if you go there, but I have on occasion, actually more than a couple of occasions. Yeah, Sergeant Booker said, when are they going to run out of ammo or people to shoot? Well, it's a work in progress. But because of what happened, I had to ask myself, how long is it before I'm going to be deplatformed? Or how long is it before you're going to be deplatformed? Because despite everything else that's going on, the goal of leftists is to remove conservatives and normal people from all aspects of society. Don't doubt it for a second. The cancel culture is reaching into people in places like never before. It began sort of like a shunning or an ostracization of people. Is that a word? I think I just made it one. On leftist campuses all across America. That's pretty much where it started. But it's now transitioned from a point of disagreement to an operational. It has become a weaponized tool of destruction, where people are actively seeking to ruin the lives of other people, removing them from employment, removing their free speech, even removing their ability to conduct their normal lives. And it's called the cancel culture. It is a modern form of ostracism in which somebody is thrust out of social or professional circles, one or both or more, either online or in social media, in the real world or both. Those people who run into this ostracization are said to be canceled. So it's used by leftists in almost every instance I can think of against conservatives, Republicans, people who voted for or support President Trump, people who support free speech, the Second Amendment, and these days, for God's sakes, even people who support the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. That is to say, everybody who doesn't actively support everything advocated by leftists. The transition occurred this way and in this fashion, and I've used this for other leftist causes, and it's true for this. And now it's true for every aspect of leftists. The transition goes like this. It goes from tolerance to acceptance to advocacy. So today, if you are no longer an active advocate of fill in the blank, you're subject to being labeled any form of and IST. And further, subject to doxing, which is, that includes revealing your address, your place of employment, your family members' names, schools you go to, schools your children go to, their addresses, your date of birth, private information, and making that all public. So that specifically you can be targeted at home, at work, for public harassment, protests, hacking, and even worse. The point is not to just embarrass you. It's to ruin you, or in some cases, ensure that you are targeted for violence. So this happened recently to Brandon Strock. He was removed, actually banned from an email provider, because they didn't care for the content of his emails, which means any number of things. Like, number one, they must be reading and monitoring his emails, something that would normally require a warrant for law enforcement to accomplish. Or two, members of the company actually know of him and they hate his politics just because. Or three, complaints have been purposely made in order to cancel his speech, or a combination of all of those things. So this isn't just an attempt, but a successful means of ensuring that, much less put thoughts into the public, Brandon Strock can't even communicate on a personal level with others through email. So, do what BZ calls the logical extension, and you better start asking questions these days like this. How long before you are removed from an email provider because they don't like your politics or what you say, because they read your emails? Prove they don't. Or, from their end, prove we do. Yeah. Good luck with that. So here's what happened. On November 9th, Brandon Strock was told he has to leave his email provider, MailChimp. Let me repeat this. MailChimp, just in case you happen to have that. MailChimp. They self-bill themselves as a top email service provider. So they send him an email. And I have a copy of it, November 9th, 4:33 p.m. to Brandon Strock. This is the exact email. Hello, Brandon. MailChimp is not able to serve as the email provider for your account with the username Brandon Strock because the content associated with your industry conflicts with our acceptable use policy, MailChimp.com/legal/acceptable use, or presents a significant risk to our deliverability. Now, do they go into detail about that? No. Obviously a leftist organization, but as you should have, a few questions. Okay. What is the content that is associated with his industry? We all know what they're referring. Brandon Strock is now a major influencer. I brought his name up to Gabrielle Ingram, who was just here in the first hour. He's a major influencer. That may be where she's going to. Just thought I should tell you. In politics, he started the entire hashtag walkaway movement. So the perception is, obviously, he's getting too much power. He met President Trump. He was invited to Trump rallies. He's hosted and started any number of conferences, meetings, marches, and the like. Therefore, the conclusion can only be he needs to be throttled and crushed by leftists. So it's too easy for him to communicate his message, so why don't we just help eliminate his ability to communicate? So what industry are they talking about? That's a good question. I suppose addressing the issues of bravery, not having a hive mind, thinking for oneself, realizing who the Democrats really are, and having the temerity to actually talk about it. I don't know, maybe that's an industry. So to what specific content are they referring? So how does his content conflict unless they are reading and monitoring his emails? And what the hell does a significant risk to our deliverability mean? What? What does that mean? Okay, I speak leftist, as I've said before. Please allow me to translate. That means that they could themselves be potentially subject to doxing or the cancel culture if they were to continue hosting his emails. Clearly, as far as I'm concerned, somebody squealed from within or complained from without. And it probably occurred in both ways. So what they do is they take the coward's way out, like every other free speech hating bit of social media extant, with absolute unspecificity. They refused to tell him exactly which bit he violated. They were just throwing up a litany of generic topics on the wall to see what sticks. And because they run the show, their private business, well, it all sticks, doesn't it? Well, hell, they don't care. As far as they're concerned, like I said, everything sticks. So to continue with their CVS, which is what I call corporate virtue signaling, they had to sever ties with a gay man. Think about that for a second. Yeah, that's where we are in 2020. I would remind you of this. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. So if you're on MailChimp, you should realize right now they're reading your emails and discriminating against gays. So you do as you will with that. MailChimp. Brandon Strzok was becoming too powerful for the LDAM, the leftist Democrats and the American media maggots. It's clear now that a certain website, not a point on Twitter, not a point on Facebook, but an actual website also then became too powerful to suit leftists. So Google, if you've been paying attention, has already throttled Breitbart.com damn near into the ground. They're almost undiscoverable on Google. But at least if you know where to go, they can be seen. You have to know to go to Breitbart.com because search results through Google aren't making it. Here's an article, Election Interference, Google Purges Breitbart from Search Results. Imagine that. A few days after the 2016 election, at an internal meeting later leaked to Breitbart News, top Google executives, including Sundar Pichai, Sergey Brin, and Kent Walker, lamented President Trump's victory, comparing Trump voters to extremists. You're an extremist, folks. If you like the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights, well, you can keep your Constitution and your Bill of Rights until we want to take it from you. You extremists. They were discussing their desire to take Trump's election and the populist movement and make it a blip in history. So what happened is that all these animals learned from 2016. So true to their word, 4 years later, Google is deliberately working to interfere with the re-election of Trump in 2020. I have a great cut about that. There are a whole bunch of ways in which Google is interfering in the 2020 election, but it's about political search bias. Search visibility, that is a key industry measure of how findable a publisher's content is in Google search. New data shows Google has suppressed Breitbart's search visibility. I hope you're sitting down. Google has suppressed Breitbart's search visibility by 99.7% since 2016. Before that, Breitbart ranked in the top 10 search positions. What that means is on the first page of Google search results for 355 key search terms. But now, at least as of July 20th, 2020, Breitbart ranks in the top 10 search positions for only one search term. And on April 4th, 2016, Breitbart ranked in the top 100 search positions for 16,820 key search terms. But now, as of July, Breitbart ranks in the top 100 search positions for only 55 search terms. Google controls it all. So, when in doubt, simply remove all the speech you don't like. Those damned uppity conservatives and their bitter clinging to their God and their guns. It's so terrible.
Beaten down so long, and they feel so betrayed by government.
Well, it's not surprising then that they get bitter and they cling to guns or religion or antipathy towards people who aren't like them, or a way to explain their frustrations.
You bitter clingers. Oh, he forgot to say, and also that stupid Constitution and its ridiculous Bill of Rights. Sad thing is, there are likely some conservatives in the leftist woodpile here and there, which is absolutely horrendous. There should be no mixing of the thoughts, okay? Heil Zuck, Heil Brin, Heil Dorsey, Heil Bezos, Heil Soros. Yeah, click those cleated metal heels for me right now, would you? Then there was this. This is what I'm referring to specifically. This is a new direction now for the LDAM, leftist Democrats and American media maggots. ConservativeTreehouse.com. The Treehouse now is deplatformed. Most conservative Treehouse readers are likely aware of the term deplatforming. Unfortunately, the big tech control mechanism to shut down speech and assembly has now arrived at our doorstep. This is an editorial that they wrote. 1 week after the 2020 presidential elections, the conservative Treehouse received the following notification. Given the incompatibility between your site's content and our terms, you need to find a new hosting provider and must migrate the site by Wednesday, December 2nd. Oh, that was yesterday. So the next question you ought to be asking yourself right now, okay, who did this? WordPress. Oh, bloviatingzeppelin.net is on WordPress. So, what was our violation? Well, first they said, what does it mean? It means Conservative Treehouse is being kicked off of WordPress because the content of their research and their discussion doesn't align with the ideology of those who would define what is acceptable speech and what isn't. And they also write, okay, well, what was our violation? After 10 years of brutally honest discussion, opinion, deep research, and crowdsourcing work with undeniable citations, that's the difference. Citations on the events we outline, there is no cited violation of any term of service because Conservative Treehouse has never violated one. So let me repeat for those of you who just tuned in from the Department of Redundancy Department. There is no cited violation of any terms of service because Conservative Treehouse has never violated one. Conclusions? Anybody? Bueller? The WordPress company is not explaining the reason for deplatforming because there is no justifiable reason for it. At the same time, they're bold in their position. Perhaps this is the most alarming part, and everybody should pay attention. They don't care. They don't care because they don't have to. Section 230. Hello, read it. They don't have to care yet. Truthful assembly is now the risk. Conservative Treehouse is now, this is a key. It's too big with a site reach of 500,000 to 1 million unique readers each day. And with well over 200,000 subscribers, our assembly is too large, too influential, and presents a risk. We guard the flickering flame. Folks, I guard the flickering flame. You guard the flickering flame. Accepting at its core this move is all about politics. This is yet another reference point in the tenuous nature of where we stand today. There's no hate speech on that website, they say. Conservative Treehouse says. There's no graphic, violent, foul, or abusive speech here. The content of the Treehouse is the same discussion that happens all around your kitchen table or your back porch discussions with friends. We would never cheapen or insult that conversation with vulgarity because that's not who we are, because that's not who our nation is. Well, it's who BZ is, though. As they write, though, this is the point. The content is not compatible with WordPress, the world's largest website and blog hosting service. I didn't know that, but I do know it now. The content within the largest blog on that global platform is what has become troublesome. The content. So what's the point? Because there is one. I'll make it right after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Southern Sense is conservative talk with Annie, the radio chick you bellows as host, and C.S. Bennett, co-host. Informative, fun, irreverent, and politically incorrect. You never know where they'll go, but you'll love the journey. Annie is a top conservative host on Top Talk Radio and features some of the finest guests packed with important politicians and newsmakers. Listen every Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, noon to 3 Pacific, on the SHR Media Network. Remember, Southern Sense is common sense.
Hey, are you guys listening? This is Shannon from Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media. I know you've been wondering where we are and what's been going on. Well, folks, that's right, we're back. So please join us 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday on SHR Media, on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, and Facebook Live at 11 a.m. on Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM at Facebook. You don't want to miss a minute. We've got lots of guests, lots of segments, and lots of interesting things. And let's face it, there's nowhere for you to go, so you might as well tune in. Again, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. We're back live on the air on SHR Media, 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday, audio and Facebook Live, audio and video. Yes, we are going to do video. Facebook Live, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Hope to see you soon.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And we're back. This is the final 27 minutes of the show. Thanks for being here tonight. My thanks to Gabrielle Ingram for being here in the first hour. A great representative of being a community activist and common sense and logical things involving government and its reaction to COVID-19, or what I call Wuhan-19. I was talking about deplatforming, and before we were so rudely interrupted for a couple of promos, what I want to say is I can't see how this does not become even more normalized under a Biden. What that really means is a Harris leftist administration. So I have to do what BZ calls the logical extension. Here's what conservatives need, and I've said this for quite some time, I'll keep saying it, and it's going to take lots of cash. It would take millions, if not billions of dollars. But it's how you'd have to begin. First, some kind of a massively wealthy conservative would have to buy a bunch of land and build massive server farms for a new search engine. You'd have to create your new search engine so that you couldn't not be removed. With a new search engine, call it freedom. With freedom, you can go anywhere. You can search anything, and you're going to get the proper results. And it's not going to skew results. You know, like Google used to be, at least 10 or 15 years ago. You then need, that would lead to conservative email hosts. You'd have to have a whole bunch of new ones. Reagan.com, I went there for a while. That was terribly mismanaged. All I got was spam. I was horribly dissatisfied with Reagan.com. But you need more conservative email hosting and other communication sites. I don't know. Maybe they need our own dedicated satellite. So that would then extend to new video hosting sites, web hosting sites, and a series of new social media sites. They're trying right now desperately. We need something to hit and to stick. I hope it's not Parler. Everything has to be self-hosted, self-funded, something that can't be deplatformed because, well, the server farms would have to be absolutely independent of everything else. An independent search engine, independent sites, independent hosting. And that, folks, is a lot of damn money, but that's what it would take. Because that's what all these other leftist assholes have right now. Like I said, BZ's platform at bloviatingzeppelin.net is WordPress. So at one time from, I don't know, say about 2005 to 2009, it wasn't uncommon for me to get about 100 hits per minute. Now, because I don't write so much, it's just a fraction of that. So my guess would be that's why I'm not targeted, because I'm not powerful. People don't read me that much. So what if in today's environments, I was getting 100 to 200 hits per minute or more? What if I were highly read, quoted, and I had something close to the readership and efficacy of conservative Treehouse? Right. I'd be gone too. The only difference between me and them is I don't reach nearly as many people. I am a flea in contrast. But these are your freedoms being removed, folks, right in front of your face. And simultaneously, you are being gaslighted, told this isn't really happening to you, that you're a raving conspiracist. You can't believe your lying eyes. And if you haven't clued in yet, leftists and many Democrats, they don't want you around. They want you gone. They want you eliminated, or like the Borg, they want you assimilated. Many leftists are finally speaking and writing in the clear, suggesting that you should not just be removed from society. Some people are advocating for your killing. Oh, and police too. Yeah, of course. That's the state of the art for 2020. It's just insane. Now, I am of two minds. I happen to hear, I don't know if you guys did, Dan Bongino's show today. He had on Lieutenant General Michael Flynn for an hour. Oh my God. Talk about revelatory. I would love to be able to play that for you. I don't think I'm going to be able to. Well, I know I won't be able to. Because I would be canned. I couldn't get YouTube going. Facebook would kill me if Facebook hasn't already killed me. My only hope right now is Periscope for this show tonight. Wow. I heard that. That was my stomach. I want to instead... God, I really want to play that Dan Bongino show for you. It'd take about an hour. And Facebook would remove me. There's no doubt about that. My Congress critter in California until I got redistricted used to be Representative Tom McClintock. He's now in the 4th District. That includes Roseville, El Dorado Hills, Mariposa, like that. Used to be up in my area, around the 4,000-foot level. But he was on C-SPAN recently, and he was talking about Governor Newsom.
Mr. Speaker, I rise this morning in defense of Governor Gavin Newsom, who recently defied his own idiotic COVID edicts as he partied at one of the few restaurants that's not yet been forced out of business. I defend him because he was doing what we once all did in a free society, make our own decisions over what risks we're willing to run and what precautions we're willing to take according to our own circumstances to protect our own health. Yes, COVID is a nasty bug, and 250,000 Americans have died while having it. But this isn't the bubonic plague.
Bingo.
The CDC's best estimate is that if you're under 49, your chance for surviving COVID, if you get it, is 99.92%. Even if you're over 70, you have a 94.6% rate of recovery.
Thank you.
40% who get it don't even know they have it. And yet we've allowed our officials to ruin our quality of life over it, destroying countless businesses, throwing tens of millions into unemployment, robbing our children of their educations, and shredding our most cherished rights as Americans. Governor Newsom's night of partying should be a wake-up call for every American. Every time we step outside our homes, the risks that we face multiply. A free society assumes that its citizens are competent to assess those risks, balance them against the avoidance costs, and to manage their decisions in a generally responsible way. It's called common sense.
Damn it.
And it's a necessary prerequisite for self-government and liberty. The choice of an octogenarian with emphysema might be very different from those of a healthy governor of California. Only a fool would claim the omniscience to make an informed judgment for every person in every circumstance in every community. Yet sadly, this crisis has revealed that fools abound in public office and that a fool with power can quickly become a petty tyrant. Which brings us back to Governor Newsom. These government nannies love to tell us that they're just following the science. Well, what does the science actually tell us? It tells us that COVID poses virtually no risk to children, but can be severe among the elderly. So what did these lockdown leftists do? They closed all the schools and ordered infected patients into nursing homes.
God.
The science tells us that outdoor transmissions of the virus are extremely rare and that 80% of infections occur in people's homes. So what did these lockdown leftists do? They closed our beaches, parks, and campgrounds and ordered people to stay at home.
Where 80% get infected.
Science tells us that obesity is a contributing factor to the severity of the disease. So what did these lockdown leftists do? They closed all the gyms.
No gyms.
And kept the liquor stores open. These lockdowns haven't saved lives. The states with the most stringent lockdowns generally have the highest mortality rates from COVID. Utah stayed open while next door Colorado shut down. Utah currently has half the COVID mortality rate and 3/4 the unemployment rate as Colorado. But the lockdowns have cost countless lives, from suicides, drug and alcohol abuse, domestic violence, and deferred health screenings and treatments. Recently, Governor Newsom demanded that restaurant diners replace their masks after every bite, but also minimize the times they're taken off. I guess that means you take really big bites. Thanksgiving dinners are allowed in California, but only when they're held outside. Guests are seated 6 feet apart, and they last no more than 2 hours. Now, it's all right to use the bathroom, but only if it's frequently sanitized. Otherwise, presumably, you'll just have to use the bushes. And for God's sake, no singing. I've wondered how much longer the American people are going to tolerate this nonsense. So let us not criticize Governor Newsom. Perhaps he's just offered us all deliverance from his own folly. Nor should we criticize the California legislators who ignored travel and quarantine restrictions to junket in Hawaii.
Right, perfect.
Nor should we ridicule Speaker Pelosi for choosing not to wear a mask in a hair salon that was forced to close for the rest of us. Good for them. They're demonstrating by their actions the freedom that every American citizen needs to reclaim from these very same people. The governor should make his own decisions about running his own life. I only ask that he and his ilk would stop telling the rest of us how to run ours. I yield back.
Pretty succinct, wouldn't you say? I would. I came across this video. This is 4 minutes of a video that a lot of people have sent me, and I have not had the ability to play until now. I'm not going to go into it in detail on this show. All I can say is that now we've been hearing, since Monday, any number of hearings about voter fraud and truly how widespread and rampant it is. And the end goal was to make sure that President Trump was not reelected, and they did anything and everything they could, legal and primarily illegal, to do that. There was a 4-year plan to do that. Folks kept sending me this video. I haven't played it until now, and now I'm going to play it. This is, I'm sure, what's going to get me kicked off of Facebook for playing it. And I don't care. Fuck them. I'm going to play it anyway. 4 minutes and 35 seconds of you tell me what you think of this.
Hindsight is 20/20, and the enemy is very cunning. But now that they have launched their coup against President Donald J. Trump, we can see their battle plans. He got 4 years in the White House, and they weren't going to give him a second term. Plans for 2020 began immediately following the 2016 election. 9 days before Trump's inauguration, Fauci says there is no doubt that President Trump will be confronted with a surprise infectious disease. 2 days after the president's inauguration, Bill Gates spoke at Davos and warned of a coming deadly pandemic. An illegal surveillance operation was already launched before the election, and the president was then subjected to 4 years of nonstop, baseless attacks and defamation, keeping Trump on the constant defense and the American people distracted, while the deep state establishment prepared for the 2020 election. The COVID hoax was in the works years before the election of Donald Trump, but they started fast-tracking it.
Okay, stop. You guys have seen the information that came out recently indicating that there is evidence, clear evidence, to indicate that Wuhan 19 was in the United States already in December of 2019. Every day we find out more and more about the lies and the truths and the half-truths about Wuhan 19. And the response is, well, you know, it's a virus in progress and we don't know how it's reacting. Then why are we paying Dr. Fauci? Why are we paying the CDC? It's like voting machines. Let me ask you this. I know I've stopped the video, but it's my show. I get to sidebar whenever I wish. One thing that when I was talking to Gabrielle that I didn't mention that I'd love to is, folks, haven't you wondered, wouldn't you like to force Dr. Fauci to take a blood test? I would. I'd love to find out just how much hydroxychloroquine is in his system. And here's another question we should all be asking. On major voting days, you know, November 3rd, November 7th, whatever the first Tuesday of November happens to be, our voting systems and election boards are busy. And then there may be one or two more elections of a fair significance in the year. But it's not as if the election boards all throughout 50 states have elections to handle every damn day, or every month, or every couple of months. So, shouldn't we, why haven't we been asking all of these election boards, what have you been doing in between? Why aren't you scrubbing the voter rolls? Why aren't you matching signatures? Why aren't you finding people who are no longer at these addresses? Why aren't you scrubbing these voter rolls? Why aren't you matching people who are here lawfully and who aren't? Why aren't you taking care of your job? And the answer you know is, well, it's because they're all run by leftists. And here is the perfect storm in 2020. Which is really weird because last year in 2019, Amy Klobuchar, Elizabeth Warren, and Ron Wyden were all Democrats, all saying something similar to, well, you can't trust mail-in ballots. And it's all about overthrowing Trump, because he doesn't play well in the playpen.
In 2017, Dr. Fauci began the controversial program of manipulating a virus to become more infectious to humans. This is known as gain-of-function research. In 2008...
Stop. Why would you ever fund gain-of-function research? That means let's take a virus and weaponize it and make sure that it's even more deadly than it was before. That's a smart thing to do.
Several CIA agents are elected into public office, claiming their new mission is to foil Trump. In 2019, Fauci committed $3.7 million to the Wuhan lab in China for gain-of-function work on bat coronaviruses.
Why did he do that? Ask yourself these questions. Could it possibly be because that wasn't a popular thing to do in the United States? He couldn't get people to buy off on it to the multiple millions of dollars, but China would.
In 2019, Dominion voting machines, funded by the Clinton Foundation, expanded their 1,600 jurisdictions into the state of Georgia. In October of 2019, the Gates Foundation, the World Economic Forum, and Johns Hopkins sponsored Event 201, a tabletop exercise that simulated millions dying from a strain of coronavirus. 2 months later, China reports an outbreak of pneumonia.
What did they know and when did they know it? All of these people.
In Wuhan. March 13th, 2020, the U.S. shuts down for COVID. Thousands of people lose their jobs overnight. We are told that masks don't work.
And that we had to flatten the curve. That's all we needed to do, folks. No worry. All we had to do is flatten the curve.
And yet, we are told that we must wear them. On March 16th, the Brennan Center for Justice releases How to Protect the 2020 Vote from the Coronavirus and suggest mail-in ballots, among other changes to the election.
Perfect storm. I tell you, perfect storm. Everything in an election year is about the election. Everything in an election year is about the election. Do you believe that there is no connector whatsoever between what's happening in 2019 and COVID-19, Wuhan 19? Do you really think that?
The media tries to blame Trump. Fear is injected into the brainwashed masses over an alleged virus less deadly than the common cold.
Here's what I'm going to do next week. I'm going to research this, and I'm going to bring a special report to you showing you what Trump did in reaction to this ahead of everyone else, because I'm tired of hearing all these leftist Democrats and American media maggots talk about Trump didn't do anything. Bullshit.
On May 25th, Soros-funded violent protests erupt throughout the country. For the rest of the summer, cities burn, businesses are looted, and people are murdered in the streets. The entire platform of the Democrat Party becomes, if you want the chaos to end, vote for Joe Biden.
Right.
In September of 2020, the Mockingbird media began reporting that Trump will refuse to leave the White House when he is beaten in November. On election night, just as the president begins to surge in critical states, the election is inexplicably halted. Thousands of mail-in ballots appear in the middle of the night.
And now we're finding evidence to indicate that's true.
All for Joe Biden. While completely ignoring massive evidence of voter fraud, the mainstream media prematurely calls victory for Joe Biden. And now, agents of the deep state are decloaking themselves, calling for the president to concede and give full power back to the crooked establishment. If the president concedes, the Trump family will be forever destroyed, and America will fall into chaos. The only route to victory is to win the election in the courts and go on a massive offensive against the deep state establishment and the Mockingbird media.
Stop here for just a second. If you'd asked me a week ago, definitely 2 weeks ago, whether or not I thought that court challenges would have a potentially serious chance of overturning the election or turning it over to Trump, I would have said, I'm not really on board with that. But I've changed my view. And finally, the information, I think, is starting to come out. As far as I'm concerned, it's clear.
Those attempting to overthrow the United States need to be executed. The battle is just beginning. God bless America. For Infowars.com, this is Greg Reese.
By the way, if you want to find banned videos, go to banned.video. B-A-N-N-E-D. Banned.video. As you would expect, I have so many more things to talk about. Vaccination cards. Hey, folks, you're going to be given a vaccination card to remind you when you need to update your vaccination, except that now we discovered, as I indicated before, a Pfizer official said, well, we're not sure really that will stop the transmissibility of Wuhan 19, but you're still going to have to take the vaccination. And what if it's mandatory? You know, government operates on the consent of the governed. And there's starting to be pushback in Staten Island, many other places. I think it's way overdue. And I've said before, I'm in my 7th decade. I wouldn't expect anyone to stop making money and stop supporting their family for me. If there's anyone that should be quarantined or held aside, it should be me. With every comorbidity known to man, it's not the responsibility of all of the United States to get locked down and destroyed for me. Nor would I want it. Nor would I want it. I'll be back next week. I'll have more outrageous things to say. In the meantime, well, have a great weekend.
Monsieur has unlocked!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk, Bobcat, Saloon radio show, live and direct right here from the SHR Media Network. If you want to contact me, you can find me on Twitter. I am really active on Twitter at BZEP, at BZEP, and on my blog, hosted by WordPress, at least for a while, bloviatingzeppelin.net. Promotional consideration is by the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. And also by the Boeing Company. If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. 737s are coming back. And by Pratt & Whitney Engines Thrust. So will you can trust. Tiaras are by My Little Pony. Tell them I won't be long. Thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team, with whom I will be consorting about a half hour, I think. Thanks to Gabrielle Ingram for being here tonight. A great spokeswoman for a great movement. We need more people like her. Thanks, Gabrielle. Thanks to everybody who was here tonight, listening live. Thanks to everybody listening in podcast. Thanks to the American Trucker. You keep America moving now more than ever. God bless. Take care. Be safe. Have a great weekend.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Jim Bob.
Good night, and good luck.